The sun had barely dipped behind the hills when Maya gripped the steering wheel tighter, her headlights piercing through the light fog, curling over the rural backroad. She had driven this route dozens of times. It wound lazily between pine-covered hills and ran parallel to a narrow, fast-moving river. Tonight, though, something felt wrong. She rolled her window down. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic beneath it, like riverstone freshly broken. Her younger brother Leo sat quietly beside her, tapping on his phone, oblivious. They were driving home from their aunt's cabin. The road was nearly empty, just a scattering of mailboxes and the occasional mailbox post leaning into the dusk. Maya's eyes flicked to the mile markers. Just past mile 14, she slowed instinctively. That's when she saw it. Dead center in the road stood a deer. Not moving, not grazing, not even blinking. Its legs were stiff, its body frozen in alert tension. It wasn't startled by the headlights. It didn't bolt into the trees. It just stared, straight at her. Maya eased her foot off the gas and tapped the brakes. Leo looked up. "Why are we stopping?" She didn't answer at first. Something in the deer's posture sent a chill up her spine. It wasn't just in the way it stood, but in the way the world around it held still too. The trees were no longer swaying. The insects had gone quiet. Even the river, normally loud along this stretch, seemed hushed. The deer shifted its head just slightly, toward the road ahead. And that's when Maya saw the shimmer. It looked like the road dipped unnaturally in the distance, a sliver of wet reflection that wasn't part of the usual curve. Her headlights couldn't fully reach, but the shape of the asphalt was wrong, warped. She threw the car into park. "I think the road's out." Leo frowned. "How do you know?" The deer snorted and bolted, but not into the woods. It ran backward, the way they had come, as if urging them to follow. Maya didn't hesitate. She reversed 50 feet and turned onto the shoulder, grabbing a flashlight from the glove box. She left Leo in the car and walked forward, heart pounding. Just past the next bend, the beam of her flashlight revealed what the deer had sensed long before she had. The road was gone. The river had swollen over its banks, likely during last night's storm. The asphalt had collapsed into a chasm, the earth beneath it washed away. All that remained was a jagged edge and several feet of crumbling space where the pavement had once been. And beyond that, nothing. Had they driven even 30 seconds farther without slowing down, their car would have gone straight into the ravine. She stood frozen for a long time, breath catching in her throat, the echo of rushing water below filling the void. And in the silence, one thought pulsed in her mind. The deer knew. Maya didn't remember how long she stood at the edge of the collapse. The roar of the river below sounded louder now, almost impatient. Bits of gravel crumbled beneath her shoes and tumbled into the dark. She took a cautious step back. Behind her, Leo's voice echoed faintly. "What is it?" She turned toward the car, still frozen in its high-beam stance like a guardian against the dusk. "Stay there," she called back. But Leo was already climbing out. By the time he reached her, flashlight in hand, Maya was crouched near the fracture. Her hand hovered over a snapped root, jutting out of the cliff wall like a bone. "It's not just erosion," she said. "The entire underside of the road's gone." Undermined from below, Leo swallowed. How much farther till the bridge? Half a mile. Maybe less. They both knew it was no longer reachable tonight. Maya stood up and looked at the treetops swaying gently in the wind. The storm had passed hours ago, but its scars were fresh. The ground still bled water. The asphalt glistened like wet skin. Leo turned his flashlight to the ground, then to the trees. "Where'd the deer go?" Maya shook her head. "It ran back. It saw this before we did. It felt it." Leo scoffed softly, more from discomfort than disbelief. "Animals run from headlights all the time." "Not like that," Maya said. "It wasn't afraid of us. It was warning us." He didn't argue, but she could see the doubt settling in the crease of his brow. Still, he followed her without protest as they walked the edge of the road to see just how much damage had been done. They didn't get far. About 50 feet down, the next stretch had sagged into a shallow curve. The road had dipped, like something hollowed out beneath it. A hairline crack ran along the pavement like a vein. The earth groaned quietly when they stepped too close. "We shouldn't be walking here," Leo muttered. "We wouldn't have been walking here at all," Maya said, "if not for that deer." He was silent after that. They returned to the car and sat with the engine off, wrapped in blankets from the back seat. The only light was from the moon, pale and watchful through thin clouds. Maya pulled out her phone. No signal. "Let's go back to the last turnout," she said. "We can get reception near the ranger station entrance." As she started the engine, she cast one last glance down the road. In the distance, and past the crumbled asphalt, past the sagging bend, she saw it again. The deer. It stood in the trees just off the trail, its head tilted, watching. Not running, not grazing, just still. And then it vanished into the woods, not in panic but in purpose, like a guardian retreating from its post. By the next morning, the incident still echoed in Maya's mind like a warning bell that wouldn't stop ringing. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the deer again, standing alone in the dusk, unmoving, staring directly into her headlights like it had chosen that moment. She and Leo made their way back to the ranger station just after sunrise. The road behind them had been cordoned off with orange barriers, and a team of county engineers was already out, taking soil samples and marking the area with spray paint. Ranger Owens greeted them at the entrance, clipboard in hand. "You were the ones who reported the collapse?" Maya nodded. "Yes, but we only stopped because of—" She paused. "Because of a deer." He gave her a look. Not mocking, just blank. Waiting. She continued, choosing her words carefully. "It didn't run. It blocked the road. Just stood there until we slowed down, then turned and ran the other way. I followed its stare and found the break in the road." Owens tilted his head slightly. "So, you're saying the deer warned you?" "I'm saying the deer responded to something we didn't detect yet," she replied. "It sensed instability, vibration, scent, maybe changes in sound." Leo leaned on the hood of their car. "The weird part is that it didn't act afraid. It was like it wanted us to stop." The ranger looked thoughtful now. "You're not the first to say something like that." Maya straightened. "What do you mean?" He flipped through his clipboard and pulled out a report. Just 3 weeks ago, a hiker filed a statement, said he was heading toward the creek bridge near Hollow Bend when a deer stood blocking the trail. Wouldn't move, same behavior. When he tried to circle around, the trail behind him gave way. Almost took him with it. Maya felt a chill run through her. "Was it the same deer?" she asked. Owen shrugged. "Hard to say. But if it was, it's not just lucky. It's acting with intent." They walked together to the incident site. Maya traced her steps from the night before, this time in daylight. The canyon looked deceptively peaceful now. The river sparkled below, rushing quickly but without the roar of the night. The collapsed road was roped off, chunks of broken asphalt crumbling inward like jagged teeth. Leo stood silently, arms crossed. If animals really do pick up on danger, maybe we should be paying more attention. "I am," Maya said quietly. She knelt near the edge, eyes scanning for tracks. And sure enough, faint but present, a line of hoof prints in the wet dirt. They had come from the woods, stopped at the road's center, then turned back. Same as the night before. She didn't know how yet, she didn't know why. But the deer had known. And that terrified her more than anything the storm could have done. By the third day, Maya couldn't stop thinking about the prints. The way the deer had stood directly in the road, facing their vehicle, just long enough to force her to slow down, just long enough to see. That wasn't random. That was choice. She spent the morning at the ranger station archives, combing through wildlife reports. Not just accidents or sightings, but strange encounters. There weren't many, but a few stood out. 2 hikers startled by a buck that refused to move off the path near a flooded creek. A camper reporting a doe walking in circles around a fallen tree before a sudden mudslide. None of the events were formally connected, but in the margins, Maya began to trace a pattern, a location, a shape. It all centered on a narrow stretch of elevated woodland known as Whistler's Hollow, named for the constant wind that echoed through its tall, close-packed pines. The deer, she realized, had appeared again and again along a curved spine of trails leading through the hollow and toward the canyon's edge. And nearly every time, the animal had been present shortly before something collapsed, cracked, or gave way. Leo didn't believe in patterns. Maybe it's coincidence, he said. Deer live in the forest. Bad stuff happens in the forest. You're just connecting the dots because you want a story. But Maya wasn't so sure. She returned to Whistler's Hollow that afternoon alone. The woods were dense there, older than much of the rest of the canyon, and the wind truly did whistle. Through cracks in the trunks, over old logs, around stones half swallowed by moss. She walked the path carefully, eyes scanning for movement. No people, no fresh signs of storm damage. And then she saw it. Standing in the narrow break between two cedars, half lit by the low sun, was the deer. Same one. Slender frame, one nicked ear, a dark patch along its flank. It looked directly at her, then slowly turned and stepped off the path. Maya followed. Branches brushed her arms as she slipped between the trees, deeper into a part of the forest she hadn't walked in years. The terrain sloped, just enough to feel uneven underfoot. Roots curled like fingers. The wind whispered above. The deer paused once while it looked back, then continued. And just as Maya reached a sudden opening in the trees, she saw why it had led her there. A sinkhole, at least 12 feet across, hidden beneath layers of wet leaves. Its edge was cracked, the ground caving in, and it lay directly beneath the trail. If someone had come running through or even walked with a little too much weight. She turned toward the deer, but it was gone, vanished, as if it had only existed to lead her here. Maya marked the location of the sinkhole with a broken tree branch and bright blue flagging tape she carried from the ranger station. Her hands trembled slightly as she looped the tape around a low branch, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of understanding. This wasn't just erosion. The entire hillside beneath Whistler's Hollow was hollowing out. She returned to the trail and traced the slope back toward the main path. On the way, she found more signs. Small, nearly imperceptible sags in the ground. Hairline cracks in roots that once hugged tightly to the soil. Even a boulder that had shifted just slightly, its base now exposed to air. The earth was slowly sinking in on itself. That night, she brought the maps and marked reports back to Ranger Owens. He leaned over the table in the dim light of the cabin's emergency lanterns. "This is more than just a storm aftermath," he muttered. Maya nodded. "I think there's a slow landslide forming beneath Whistler's Hollow. It hasn't broken yet, but when it does, it's going to take half the upper ridge with it." He looked at her. "And the deer? It knows. I don't know how, but it does. It's appeared near every failure point, just before things collapse. It led me to the sinkhole." Owens rubbed his chin. "Animals feel vibrations. Hear things we can't. Sense pressure changes. It's possible it knows through instinct." "Maybe," Maya said. "But it's not just surviving. It's warning us." Owens said nothing to that. They agreed to close the upper trails the next morning and alert the geological survey team. That night, Maya dreamed of forest groves, tall and ancient, with eyes watching her from between the trees. Not menacing, not curious, just present. The kind of presence that feels older than language. When she woke, her phone buzzed with a message from Leo. "Did you leave a blue tag near mile 13? Trail's buckling. I'm heading there now." Maya's heart sank. Mile 13 was directly above the deepest part of the sinkhole she had found. She jumped into her truck, heart racing. As she reached the base of the ridge, clouds had begun to gather again, stormlight creeping over the trees in thick, bruised swirls. Thunder cracked somewhere in the distance. And there, near the turnoff to the canyon overlook, something darted across the road. The deer. Running. But not away this time. It was leading her again. She pressed the gas. Rain began to fall in hard, sudden sheets as Maya sped up the twisting path toward mile 13. Her tires slid slightly on the wet gravel, and branches whipped across her windshield like frantic fingers trying to hold her back. The deer was gone now, vanished into the woods again, but she followed its path, not with her eyes, but with her gut. She reached the flagged section of trail just as Leo's SUV came into view, parked crookedly off the road, its driver's side door open. "Leo!" she shouted, jumping from the truck. The storm answered with a sharp gust of wind and another crack of thunder. No reply. She ran, boots splashing through puddles, heart hammering. The trail ahead twisted past a series of boulders and descended toward the overhang above the canyon. Trees bent under the weight of the storm. And there, near the edge of the overlook, she spotted him. Leo stood near a shallow depression in the trail, kneeling, running his hand over the cracked earth. His back was to her. Maya screamed, "Get away from there! It's not stable!" He looked up, confused at first, then alarmed as he saw her running. He opened his mouth to reply, but the ground answered for him. A low rumble rose beneath their feet, like a growl from the bones of the earth. Then, a sharp, violent crack. Maya lunged, grabbing Leo's jacket just as the ground behind him gave way. A wide gash tore through the path like paper, and the rim of the overlook crumbled into nothing. Together they tumbled backward, Maya pulling him toward the thicker forest as chunks of rock and mud slid past where his legs had just been. They landed hard, soaked and gasping. Leo blinked at her, stunned. "I didn't hear anything until—" "Because you're not supposed to," Maya whispered, breathless. But something did. They turned and looked toward the trees. There, just beyond the break in the woods, stood the deer, soaked in rain, unmoving again, watching them, as if confirming they had made it. Then, just as before, it turned and walked back into the trees, silent, unhurried. They stayed low under the trees for nearly half an hour, waiting for the tremors to stop. Rain hammered the canopy above like drumming fingertips, and the sound of earth shifting behind them never fully faded. When it was finally quiet again, Maya and Leo stood and surveyed the damage. The overlook was gone. Not just collapsed, erased. A scar of raw earth and fractured rock remained where the trail had once curved toward the canyon's edge. If Leo had been just a few feet farther ahead, no search party would have found him. They walked back toward the ranger station in silence. The forest around them felt alive, not in a poetic, tranquil way, but in the real, breathing sense. It had moved, warned, watched, and they had survived because of it. By the time they reached the station, Ranger Owens was waiting with 2 other staff members and news from the geological team. The entire hillside along Whistler's Hollow had begun to shift. The underground water from the storm had destabilized a deep fault. If the collapse hadn't happened when it did, it could have taken multiple hikers, or even campers, in the coming days. Leo sat on the steps outside the ranger office as the sun broke through the retreating clouds. Steam rose from the wet wood around them. "I still don't understand," he said finally. "Why would it keep showing up? What's it trying to do?" Maya sat beside him. "I don't think it's trying to do anything." He looked at her, confused. "I think it is part of this place. Like the river, like the wind. It doesn't follow instinct the way we define it. It just reacts to imbalance. Where we see a path, it feels pressure. When we hear thunder, it hears stress in the ground. When we get lost, it already knows the way out." She paused. "And sometimes, if we're lucky, it lets us see what it sees." Leo didn't argue. Not this time. Later that day, Maya returned alone to the point just before the new trail closure. The canyon shimmered below, peaceful again, hiding its scars beneath late afternoon light. She waited in the clearing, and there, as the shadows stretched long between the trees, the deer emerged once more. Silent. Still. They locked eyes for just a moment. No sound, no sudden movement. Just acknowledgement. And then, like before, it turned. Not out of fear, but because its purpose was complete. It vanished into the hollow, leaving behind only hoofprints and the fragile calm of a forest that had for once spoken and been heard.